So the Vatican has finally issued a statement on the whole debacle surrounding the opening ceremony where they intentionally mocked the Last Supper painting, and I think also intentionally mocked Christianity. Now, we've talked about this on the channel before, how some people are saying, well, even the organizers themselves are denying these claims, that they're not intentionally mocking the Last Supper. Those, I think, are falling on deaf ears at this point, just because we've talked about all of the evidence in favor of the fact that they are actually mocking Christianity. I mean, Dionysus is supposed to be the meal on this table, and he's supposed to be, I think, replacing Jesus, who is, in the Christian religion, our sacrifice. They had 2 years to come up with whatever they wanted to do for this opening ceremony, and this is what they intentionally did. During dress rehearsals, they should have been looking at this and been like, hey, you know what, this actually looks pretty similar to like one of the most famous paintings in history. We probably should maybe think about changing things up so people don't get the wrong idea. They had ample time to think about all of this stuff, so there's tons of evidence that there is some sort of intentionality going on here. But the point of this video is to talk about the new Vatican statement that was just released as of like hours ago. So let's go through that really quickly. So this one was posted on Catholic News Agency. I'll just be reading out this article, and I'm doing that because the statement was released in French, and I don't speak French, so we've got to use an interpreter. All right, so in response to the July 26 Paris Olympics opening ceremony that mocked the Last Supper, and after the French bishops and other Catholic and world leaders decried the display, the Vatican on Saturday issued a statement denouncing the scene, which is very good. In a brief statement emailed to journalists in French, the Holy See said, quote, "It was saddened by certain scenes at the opening ceremony of the Paris Olympic Games and cannot but join the voices raised in recent days to deplore the offense done to many Christians and believers of other religions." Very, very happy about this. They should, I think, be joining everyone that's sort of been talking about this. And it's not just been social media influencers, it's also been other priests and bishops and everything. People have been talking about this for a while now. And so I'm very glad to see some sort of official statement on behalf of the church. So I'm really curious here, though. I'm curious who they mean by believers of other religions. They could be meaning Islamic believers who also revere Jesus and Last Supper and all that. So they could be referencing that. They could also just be referencing, I guess, maybe believers in pagan religions, including believers in Dionysus. I'm not really sure who they're referencing here. To continue the quote here, "In a prestigious event where the whole world comes together around common values, there should not be illusions ridiculing the religious convictions of many people." This is something I've pointed out, and it seems so obvious, and it just boggles my mind that this somehow escaped them, especially on the hypothesis that it wasn't intentional. Like, how did you miss this? And the whole point is to bring people together, and yet you're doing this thing that, well, I think is clearly mocking Christianity, but even on their terms and what they're claiming, it's still just like very negligent, and just they should have put a whole lot more thought and care into this whole thing if that's what they want to claim. But all right, let's continue here. So the controversial scene, part of the 1.5 billion euro spectacle to kick off the 2024 Summer Olympics, featured drag queens portraying the apostles and a self-proclaimed lesbian DJ as Jesus in what appeared to be part of a fashion show, apparently mocking Leonardo da Vinci's famous painting. So the Vatican concludes its remarks by saying this: freedom of expression, which is obviously not called into question, so they're not saying that freedom of expression is a bad thing. They say it finds its limit in respect for others. Now, this seems relatively like a pretty good moral principle. Like, if you're going to express some sort of message, or if you're going to try to communicate something to other people, then do it in a way that is respectful. That's basically all that it's saying. Some people might actually respond to this and say, well, sometimes it's okay to disrespect other people in case you've got like a really good reason to do it. Okay, so for example, in the case of Jesus and the cleansing of the temple, like, he didn't necessarily respect the people that were like in there trying to exchange money and stuff, but he nevertheless had like a really good reason to do that. So then the question would be, though, is what good reason did the Olympic organizers and Thomas Joly and what reason did they have to mock Christianity and mock the belief of 2 billion Christians across the globe? I'd be really curious to know what that is. And if you guys know, let me know in the comments. So let's just continue this letter because it does contain some more interesting information. Saturday's statement comes in the wake of an open letter issued by Catholic cardinals and bishops from around the world on Friday, yesterday, calling on the International Olympic Committee to, quote, repudiate and, quote, apologize for the, quote, intentionally hateful mockery of the Last Supper. In the letter signed by 3 cardinals and 24 bishops, the prelate stated, quote, "It is hard to understand how the faith of over 2 billion people can be so casually and intentionally blasphemed," Amen. So the last thing I'll note is that if you're still sort of on the fence about whether or not they intentionally mocked the Last Supper, go watch my interview with Joe Heschmeyer. We talked about that. And we also talked about how Christians should be responding to this whole controversy. Should they be sort of outraged? Should they be speaking up about it? We also talked about in that interview how Christians have responded to mockery and blasphemy, I think is the word I'm looking for. How Christians have responded to blasphemy throughout the years. So like 200 years after Jesus, all the way up to now. How have Christians responded? We sort of rated those types of responses. A lot of things to think about. I want you guys to go check out that interview if you're interested. Oh, and remember that Christianity is true.